revolution and the wearing and style of dress of people at this present stage, from the perspective of time and space, they are definitely two different worlds. During the Cultural Revolution, women did not bother to perm, dye their hair, draw their eyebrows, and put on lipstick. Even their clothes were mostly yellow, gray, and blue. Skirts and high-heeled shoes were absolutely not allowed. About their breasts, they would find ways to press them tightly to their chest. If you budged a little, people would look at you differently, and you would be regarded as a hot foxy spirit descending on the world, a symbol of restlessness and flirting. Look at today's women, one by one, they are more enchanting and beautiful, with all kinds of postures, styles, curvaceous beauty, sexual beauty, and temperamental beauty that is fully displayed, living out their individuality, freedom, and elegance, as if all the fairies in heaven have descended to the world. The reason why different eras have different ways of dressing is that people in different eras have different consciousness, and it is the consciousness of different eras that determines the existence of those different eras. Consciousness determines existence. Why is the population of the United States growing more slowly than that of China and India? Why do couples with higher IQs, who are richer, and with higher education levels have fewer children, while poorer, less educated couples have more children? Why can a man have several wives in some countries and regions, while most countries and regions can only be monogamous? Why could a couple in our previous generation have many children, but we can only have one child at this stage of China? Aren't all these differences determined by our human consciousness? Consciousness determines existence. Why are most of the Nobel Prize winners Americans? Why is there not a single Nobel Prize winner from mainland China? Are Americans so smart and Chinese so stupid? The main reason is that Americans and Chinese have different consciousness. If you want to eat hamburgers, you will definitely not make noodles. If you want to eat chicken, you definitely won't put pork into the pot. The reason is so simple. Do we still doubt that consciousness determines existence? Consciousness determines existence. Why do the political systems of various countries in the world differ from each other? Why does the President of the United States only serve 2 terms at most, while the presidents of some countries can serve many terms? Isn't it their existence determined by the national consciousness of various countries? How was the earth born? How did the plants and animals on earth appear? Isn't this determined by the consciousness of the greatest creator? Not long ago, I read a review article. Its general meaning is to criticize the only children in China at this stage for being ambitious, unrealistic, greedy for enjoyment, and for their wishful thinking. The article also mentioned a college student who had not yet graduated describing his long-term plan. I want to go to the United States and build a villa in a small city with beautiful mountains and rivers. I want to have a green lawn, a private swimming pool, and a Mercedes-Benz. The reviewer had a good-natured ridicule on this wishful thinking and hoped that such college students can face reality, be down to earth, and not be too ambitious. In my opinion, this commenter is an outstanding representative of the idea that existence determines consciousness. His thinking is still in the narrow field of material existence. He only sees today, values reality, and he cannot imagine that the future of mankind is determined by the consciousness of mankind, that the future of each individual is determined by the consciousness of the individual. This kind of person is a frog at the bottom of a well, and the blue sky he sees is just as big as a sieve. Relying on this kind of person to guide young people is not only misleading young people, but also cruelly oppressing people's spirituality and ruining their bright future. Such people, on the surface, are kind, but in essence, are evil. If I were to comment on this college student, I would say, son, you're absolutely right. Visualize it, your wish will come true. The better and clearer the picture you have of your future in your mind, the more likely you are to realize it. The place you can see is where you are going, the situation you can realize in your brain is where you can go, because your behavior is controlled by your consciousness. If you want to go to the east, your feet can't move toward the west. The existence of reality is constantly changing with the consciousness of human beings. If we limit our consciousness to the existence of reality, we will always be slaves to the existence of reality, and we will never be able to create a better tomorrow. Sun, the universe is boundless, there are 36-dimensional spaces, so spread the wings of your imagination and fly freely, a bright future belongs to the generation that can imagine this. Whether existence determines consciousness, or consciousness determines existence, it is by no means a game of words or concepts, and it is by no means a question of whether to eat steamed buns or noodles. Whoever comes first directly determines the future of everyone. What kind of consciousness one has, he will have that kind of life. What kind of consciousness determines what kind of existence he will have. Existence determines consciousness is the thinking of animals and plants that rely on instinct to survive. Consciousness determines existence is the thinking of sages and saints, and the thinking of gods and Buddhas. If existence determines consciousness, we have only one earth. If consciousness determines existence, we will have 36-dimensional spaces. If existence determines consciousness, we can only survive in the contradictions and pains of reality forever. If consciousness determines existence, we can transcend the existence of reality and focus on future development and changes. If existence determines consciousness, we can only passively be constrained by the environment. If consciousness determines existence, we can actively open up a sunshine avenue in the existence of reality. If existence determines consciousness, we cannot see the brilliance of the greatest creator, and we can only live to die. If consciousness determines existence, we can decipher the mysteries of the time and space of the universe, extend this limited life to the infinite wonderful time and space, and then we can die to be reborn. Existence determines consciousness is conventional thinking, consciousness determines existence is unconventional thinking, and a bright future belongs to people with unconventional thinking. Democracy is the pursuit of mediocrity. Xiefeng. June 23, 2011. 3 cobblers could never exceed Zhuge Liang. Neither 3,000 nor even 30,000 cobblers could outwit him. When critical decisions are to be made, an individual of lofty vision and great strategies can outperform the collective decisions of tens of thousands of the mediocre. Democracy leads to mediocrity and to dead ends. We can illustrate this point by the several ups and downs of Chairman Mao Zedong during early 20th century Chinese history. June 1929, in the 7th CPC National Congress of the 4th Red Army held in western Fujian, Mao Zedong was forced to leave his position of the Frontline Committee Secretary of the 4th Red Army. November 1931, in the southern Jiangxi meeting held in Yeping, Ruijin, Chairman Mao was mistakenly criticized by the party and was elbowed out of the Central Committee during the Soviet era. October 1932, at the Ningde meeting, the chairman was excluded aside again and even lost his post of political commissar of the First Red Army. January 1934, during the Second Congress of the Soviet area, he was made a mere figurehead and removed from his position as chairman of the Central People's Committee. The result of these demotions was the gradual shrinking of red bases, and the revolution ushered low tide, resulting in the failure of the fifth counter-campaign against encirclement and suppression. The Red Army was forced to make a strategic shift to start the solemn and stirring move in the war history of mankind, the 25,000 Li Long March. The central base personally created by Mao Zedong was destroyed overnight. The whole universe is run in a unilateral manner under the one unique greatest creator. It is only when all life in the universe follows the will of the greatest creator that the universe can run orderly and all life can survive and live effectively. In any other way, the universe would collapse. If a cat or dog were not convinced, and cried out, "Oh, greatest creator, you have been too autocratic and domineering," the throne of the greatest creator should be shared in turns and the greatest creator should be chosen by democratic elections from the whole universe, then all would disappear. As it is with Life Genuine, if the guide were to be decided through a democratic election and if I were not elected as such, then Life Genuine would inevitably dissolve, and if that were to happen, the hopes and dreams of all the Chanyuan celestials would become impossible to achieve. Napoleon famously said, "Nothing is more difficult, and therefore more precious, than to be able to decide." It is only when the chief commander makes the decisions that they can be effective and orderly. The sage embraces the one and becomes the model of the world. The greatest creator is the one in the universe. The state leader is the one in the government. The boss is the one in a company. The conductor is the one in an orchestra. This is the model of the world, and sages must comply with it. Whoever creates a business should be the boss, with all big and small decisions being made by or delegated by that boss. Question: what types of people want democracy? Answer: 8 of those types are described here. Irresponsible people. People with mediocre minds. People who scramble for power. People who do things stealthily. People who are selfish. People who shift responsibilities. People without definite views of their own. Profiteers from others' labor without sacrificing. All matters, big and small, must be managed by responsible individuals. They should be the ones to make decisions within the scope of their responsibilities. There should be no arguments, debates, discussions, or consensuses. Whenever 2 or more people jointly control anything, the result becomes a resource-consuming process with low efficiency and mutual finger-pointing, with no one ultimately being held responsible. No matter how democratic a flock of sheep is, it can never resist a wolf. No matter how democratic a group of people with mediocre wisdom is, it can never match the vision and insight of a saint. The Life-Channuan era does not practice democracy, but each one has their duty and accountability. Like the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each one shows his or her special prowess. Each undertaking is in the hands of one responsible person. Others should cooperate fully and follow the exact requirements of the one in charge strictly and meticulously. If a leader cannot control their rule, but decides every affair through compromises and consolidations, then they are not being responsible and are incapable of assuming their responsibility. They are consuming and wasting everyone's time and energy, as well as their natural and human resources. Democracy always leads to mediocrity, and the wise should guard against that. But what should we do when a leader is self-willed, domineers their power, and exercises tyranny? I do not know. What do you think? Did life evolve from non-life?